الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, to proceed, to continue our explanation of the story تاجر الحديد وجاره. So the point that we arrived upon, or have arrived upon now, is the statement, Ya Muhammad, وبعد مدة من الزمن. وبعد مدة من الزمن. So بعد means
after.
And after is ظرف الزماني.
So it's going to be مدتي.
مدة.
Oh.
So it's going to be مدة. 10. وبعد مدة من الزمن. So first of all, why is it مدة يا أخلاق? Because بعد المدة is an إضافة, and the مضاف إليه, the second noun in an إضافة, is always مجرور. Then we have من, which is a حرف جر. الزمني. Why is it الزمني?
It's followed after حرف الجر.
So we have a حرف جر and we have اسم جر. The اسم, which is now مجرور, يجره من. Min makes it مجرور. So this statement وبعد مدة من الزمن means,
and after, I don't know, مدة
period. من الزمن from time, right? And after a period of time. Then we have رجع
التاجر
وطلب. Right.
الحديد.
So first we have رجع. رجع means
he came.
He returned. Who was it who returned? التاجر. And therefore التاجر is the fa'ilun. The fa'ilun is always مرفوع. وبعد مدة من الزمن رجع التاجر وطلب. طلب means,
is a verb.
طلب,
he went, or
he sought. Sought. This is where طالب is اسم فاعل. It's the doer of طلب. طلب, he sought. طالب is seeker. That's why you call a seeker of knowledge طالب العلم. وطلب, what did he seek? الحديد. Why is it الحديد يا أخلاق? Because it's a مفعول به. It's the object of what he sought. And the مفعول به is always منصوب. So what does that mean so far, Ya Muhammad, from وبعد?
And after a period of time, he returned, the merchant returned, and he sorted, no,
وطلب الحديد.
The iron.
He sought the iron.
He wanted it back.
Right. Because he had left al-hadida with
جاره.
jaruhu, his neighbor. Then we have
فقال
له
جاره.
right. فقال له جاره. What does that mean? فقال له جاره.
Then he said to his neighbor.
Right. Fa is, you should know what fa now is. حرف العطف. Then. فقال قال is it's a فعل ماض past tense verb meaning
he said.
He said. So if qala is he said, who is the fa'ilun here? The doer.
Who?
It's the,
Actually, that's a good question.
this فَقَالَ لَهُ جَارُهُ, this sentence is very important that you understand why it is in this form and who the doer is. So how do we know the doer? How do we recognize the doer? What's the indicator?
The who is the doer.
What's the indicator
Marfu.
that the doer is marfu'un? So which the doer is an ismun? If the doer is there, the doer will be an ismun. So first of all, do we have a doer in faqala? Is our doer in faqala?
I'm going to say no.
No. Lahu, what type of harf is it? La. Harfu jar. Who is damir al-muttasil, an attached pronoun. Okay? So you could say, well, who, we have a who, and who could be a fa'ilun. But then we have jaruhu. What does jaru mean?
Jaru means his neighbor.
Neighbor. Jaruhu means
his neighbor.
His neighbor.
So
what does it mean? Who's our doer? Who is it the one who qalas, he said?
The merchant.
If you're going to say it's the merchant, well, where is tajirun here? We only have faqala lahu jaruhu.
Is it the,
so where is the merchant?
Is it the iron? The first who is meant to?
How can it be the iron when al hadida is mansubun with a fatha?
No. I'm saying the first who is referring back to the iron. Is that wrong?
What can refer back to the iron?
The who meaning it.
No, it's more simple than that. Qala is a verb. He said.
So it's a
right?
verb.
So we need to look for our fa'il and our doer. Right? Iron doesn't speak, so it can't be the iron. So far, I mean, even from a non-grammatical point of view, it can only be one or two people who's saying this, isn't it? Because our story is Tajir al-Hadidi wa jaruhu. So it can only either be a Tajir or it can be who? The neighbor. It can only be one or two unless we've introduced a third person. Have we done that? Well, no, because again, read it. Raja'a at-tajiru. The trader returned. Wa talaba, and he sought al-hadida. He sought the iron. From whom? From the person who he left it with. Jaruhu, his neighbor. فَقَالَ لَهُ جَارُهُ. Saqala, you know, means he said. So who is it who's now doing the speaking?
The merchant.
Right, okay. If it's the merchant, what's the merchant in Arabic?
Tajir.
A tajir. And if the tajir is the one who's doing the speaking, a tajir is the fa'ilun, right? So why is it that we don't have here a tajiru? Why do we not have a tajiru in order for that to be the doer? You understand my question? If you're going to say it's the tajir who said it, then why is it we don't have a tajir in that sentence?
We don't really need to do it.
Sorry?
We don't need to because we know there's only them two.
Right, okay. So we can say we implied it. Then what does jaruhu mean? And what's its role here?
His neighbour. So he's
Yeah, his neighbour. So what is his neighbour here? Is grammatically, what is it?
Well, it's meant to be mansubun. No, maf'ul bih.
But then why did I write it jaruhu? Either I've made a mistake or it's supposed to be jaruhu, and I haven't made a mistake. So if that's not a mistake and jaruhu is marfu'un, that's an idafa, jaruhu, therefore
It's assumed.
what's assumed? No, this is more simple than that. It's more simple. You're overcomplicating it. And the reason why you're overcomplicating it is because lahu has confused you.
Yeah.
So erase lahu. And now what do we have?
Then he said to his neighbor.
Where is to now?
Okay, then he said,
Who said it?
the merchant.
But there's no merchant there. We don't have a merchant. We have a jaruhu. So why do you keep saying the merchant when we have jaruhu?
because this is his neighbour.
No. Right. Let's remove that too. Now what do we have? We have faqala jarun, because you can't say jaru, can you? Now what does it mean?
Then he said neighbor.
Yeah, stop translating it in English. Exactly. Word for what? What does it actually mean? If you're going to say that in English, ordinarily, correct English, what would it be?
Then the neighbor said.
Right. Then, actually, it wouldn't be the neighbor, is it? Because it's jarun. But if we said ala jaru, faqala ala jaru, faqala al jaru. So what does that mean? So
the neighbor said.
Right. So the neighbor said. I know it's tempting to translate it as, so he said the neighbor. But when you see that, and you see that there's a fa'ilun, which is marfu'un, read that first. So the neighbor said. Right, akhlaq. Can you see now that that means the neighbor said, or so the neighbor said? There's no tajir, there's no anything else. It's the neighbor, he said. Right? Now, let's go back to how it was. Jaruhu. Now, what does jaruhu mean?
His neighbor.
His neighbor. So what does faqala jaruhu mean?
So his neighbor said.
Right. So his neighbor said. Okay. With qala, this verb, qala, if you want to express that he said something to somebody, then you use the harfu jar la. So if you want to say he said to me, you say qala li, and it becomes li. Qala li. Right? He said to me. If you want to say he said to him, it becomes qala lahu. He said to her becomes qala laha. That's just an attached pronoun attached to the lam.
So he said to him his neighbor.
No. Right? No, you again. Yeah. Right. What does faqala jaruhu mean?
So his neighbor said.
Right. So his neighbor said. Remember what's happened. A tajir raja'a. The tajir has returned to whom? To his neighbor. وَطَلَبَ الْحَدِيدِ, and he sought the iron from whom? From his neighbor. So now it's the neighbor, فَقَالَ جَارُهُ, so his neighbor said lahu. Who does the who refer to?
The merchant.
The merchant. Lahu means?
So the neighbor.
His neighbor.
So his neighbor said to the merchant, to him.
Right. So, fa jaruhu, his neighbor, qala, said, lahu, to him. That is very important to understand, which is why we spent so long on it. Because if you don't correctly identify the doer, then you will completely misunderstand the sentence.
So the who, la who, that is assumed to be mansubun.
Lahu. No, because with the al-maqul al-qawli, the thing that he said, that's an idafa. Lahu is an idafa. La harfu jar. Hu is attached to it. Mudafun alayhi. Right? That's called shibul jumla. That's not mansubun. Right? What is mansubun or assumed to be mansubun is what he said. So what did he say? فقال له جاره لقد Right. This is another example of the same thing. Right? It's another example. Laqad, the easy bit first. What does laqad mean?
It's verily or indeed.
There's two parts. There's the lam, which is called here lam al-qasm, and there's the qad. Qad tahqiq or ta'keed. Together, for our purpose, they mean certainly or indeed.
So like emphasis on it.
Yeah, qad comes before either a fi'l madi, a past tense verb, or a present tense verb. Right? So if it comes before a past tense verb such as kataba, it means it's for the purpose of tahqiq wa ta'kid, that something indeed has happened. If it comes before a verb in the present tense, then
Certainly he will.
Something is happening.
no,
He is.
it gives a meaning of perhaps. قد يكتب means perhaps he writes or he will write. قد كتب means he's indeed done that action. That's why I say قد قامت الصلاة, because the salah has indeed been established, right? But if it comes before the past tense, then it means perhaps. So then we have akala and then a ta and a hu. What does this comprise of? This is important that we understand this.
Akala. It's a verb, past tense, and it's got the possessive.
Right.
So it's got three parts of it.
What's the verb here?
Akala, he ate.
Akala is our verb. Right? Akala is our verb. What does akala mean?
He ate.
He ate. Right? This is a fi'lun. Mardan mabniyun ala al-fathi. It's fixed upon the fatha. Right? But then we have the ta here. What does the ta represent?
It represents Madi. It makes the word Madi past.
No, it's already fi'lun madi.
Oh yeah, it makes it either depending on what we add.
What?
Yeah, it's gonna make.
What does akalat mean? She ate.
Oh, is that what it is?
Right? Ta'u ta'nith. Ta'u ta'nith. The reason why you're confused now, right? Well, we'll get to that point. The who. Right? So there's three parts to this sentence. Plus we have a who. Right? We have akala. We have ta with the sukoon, which is ta ta'nith. And we have a who. What does who mean?
His. Or
His or he or it. So akala means he ate. Then we have the ta with the sukoon on. And then we have a damirun, muttasilun, an attached pronoun who. I've made it easier for you because I've placed a sukoon on there. So what does it mean when we say akalat?
Akalat, she ate.
She ate.
It.
She ate it. Or she ate him. Right? But obviously that wouldn't make sense. And from the context, we know that who means it and refers to what?
Al-Hadid.
The hadid, because that's what we're speaking about. That's what the tajir returned back to the jar and sought. وَطَلَبَ مِنْهُ. He sought from him al-hadid. So therefore the who must refer back to al-hadid. Right, akhlaq? We look completely confused now. All that we've got here is akala, which means he ate. And I told you, you need to remember a verb or these verbs and then how to conjugate them. It's imperative. The ta with the sukoon on it, akalat. Akalat means she ate. Katabat means she wrote. Sharibat means
She drank.
jalasat.
She sat.
Qamat, she stood. Ra'at, she saw, and so on and so forth. Who? It. We know it's it and not him because it wouldn't make sense, and we know we're talking about al-hadida. Now, the reason why you're confused is because without the sukoon, we could read this.
أكلته.
We could read it akaltuhu, which means
I ate it.
I ate it. Right? Because remember, فَقَالَ لَهُ جَارُهُ, his neighbor is now speaking. So we could say that it means I ate it. Or how else could we say it?
أكلته.
Akaltahu, which means
You ate.
you ate it. Or
أكلتيه.
akalti, but then it would be akaltihi. It becomes it takes a kasra in order for it to be consistent with the letter before it that also has a kasra. Right? So it can be one of three, right, akhlaq? It can be akalathu, she ate it, or akaltuhu, I ate it, actually one of four, or akaltahu, you ate it, single male, or akaltihi, you ate it, single female. It can't be akaltihi, can it? Because neither at-tajir nor al-jaru are female. Right, akhlaq? So it can't be akaltihi. It can't be akaltahu, you ate it. Because at-tajiru didn't eat it. Did he? He didn't eat it. He left it with jaruhu. Can it be akaltuhu, I ate it? Yes. Right? Maybe that's what it means. Or maybe it means akalathu, she ate it. Right? But why could it mean she ate it? Is there a female that has been mentioned in the story?
Not so far.
No, not yet. But then, just before, we're utterly confused with how to pronounce that sentence. Because it is a sentence, isn't it? Verb, doer, object. That is a maf'ulun bihi. Okay? It's maf'ulun bihi, that who. But it's not mansubun, is it? Right. We see fi mahalli nasbin maf'ulun bihi, which is a damirun mabniyun ala dammi. So then we have this word al-firan, and I stopped here for a reason. What does al-firanu mean? It's the plural of al-fa'ru. Al-fa'ru means the mouse, or a rodent. Right? The plural for al-fa'ru is al-firan. Now, the question is, of course, because as we mentioned at the beginning, the essence of a nahu, grammar, is ضبط آخر الكلمة.
End.
The vowel on the end of the word. And this is a perfect example. How do we vowelize the noon on al-firan?
مرفوع.
If we're going to say it's marfu'un al-firanu, then what has al-firanu become, ya akhlaq? What has it become? We have a verb.
مفعول به.
What? Maf'ulun bihi. If it takes a dhammah,
فاعل.
the doer, the fa'ilun is always marfu'un. The fa'ilun is always marfu'un. The maf'ulun bihi is always
So,
mansubun with a fatha. So what are we going to place on al-firanu? Are we going to say it's marfu'un? Are we going to say it's mansubun?
it's مرفوع.
What?
It's مرفوع.
Right, if we're going to say it's marfu'un, al-firanu, then how do we vowelize akala and then the ta and the hu? Well, we know it's going to be hu on the ha, or dam on the ha. Right, al-firanu means
The mice.
the mice. Is the mice a human or a non-human akhlaq? That's nice and easy, right? Non-human. If we have an ismun which is non-human, what did we say we treat it as?
Who? Oh, هو.
Non-human plurals are treated as singular female. Singular female. What does that mean, they're treated as singular female? It means that if they are a doer in a sentence, right, then the verb we use to describe them will be
Third person female.
third person female. So what's the plural of a book?
كتاب.
Kutubun. Right? So if we have al kutubu, the books, and we want to say the books are heavy. The word for heavy in Arabic is
ثقال.
thaqilun. So are we going to say al-kutubu thaqilun like this? The books are heavy. Al-kutubu thaqilun.
No.
Why not?
Because you said non-human objects are always third person female.
Right, because the non-human objects are are treated as singular female.
Yeah.
How do we say heavy single female?
ثقيلة.
ثقيلة. الكتب ثقيلة. Can you see how al-kutubu, being non-human, is now treated as singular female? Because the adjective that we use to describe, well, I say an adjective, but that's actually jumlatul ismiyah. The khabar we use to describe al-kutubu is singular female, don't we? If we wanted to say the heavy books, it's like this: al-kutubu al-thaqilatu. Our sifa now matches al-kutubu because al-kutubu is plural male, and therefore it's non-human, therefore it's treated as single female, and al-thaqilatu is single female. Right? We've done this. Now, that's if it's a sifa. What if it's an action? Right? Well, we won't use al-kutub because it won't make sense. So what's the plural of a pen?
Qalamani.
The hadith. No. Rufi'at al-aqlam. Well, no, we can use, right, you know the hadith, Rufi'at al-aqlamu. You know, the hadith about the writing of the decree. Rufi'at means it has been raised. That's where marfu'un comes from. Rufi'at, we have the ta'u ta'nith, the ta' that represents the female. Why do we use that for al-aqlamu? Because al-aqlamu is treated as a single female. Can you see that? So,
Is that the same with the word can before it or after it?
yes. So if we're now going to make al-firanu marfu'un, what does that therefore mean in relation to akalathu?
It will be third person female.
Who is the doer?
The mice.
The mice. The mice are the doers. What did they do, ya akhlaq?
Ate something.
Ate. Akalat. Who ate
It.
it? What's it referring to?
The iron.
The iron. Right? That is if we render or make al-firanu marfu'un. It then means that indeed the mice ate it. Right? Now that is the correct vowelization of that sentence. There is another way that you could say this. You could say that that is a Dhamma. Right? And you could say لَقَدْ أَكَلْتُهُ, I ate it. Not that that would make sense, but grammatically it would still be correct. But then your problem is what does al-firanu mean? It's a new sentence because you can't attach it to this, which is why it still wouldn't be correct. But up to that point it would be. Right? So that's the correct way that we read it. And that, what I place as speech marks on, not that there are speech marks in Arabic.
They are in the story though.
What?
They got them in here.
Yeah, but that's because they've just added them. But there isn't ordinarily. That is what we call maqulul qawli. the statement of what was said, and that is considered to be مفعول به في محل نصب, because of course that entire sentence isn't منصوب لفظي, it's منصوب في محل النصب, right, as we mentioned in our other class. Right, akhlaq, is that clear? But can you see how understanding what is placed on al-firanu or al-firan is key to understanding what the sentence means?
This is prime example of maf'ul bihi doesn't always have to be at the end.
No, not when it's a pronoun.
Yeah, no,
That's
but we're
attached.
always used to it being at the end.
Yeah, but that's because we try and keep it simple. But remember that you can it's just as common to say, for example, كتب tuhu. What does that mean? كتبته.
I wrote it.
I wrote it. Can you see that akhlaq? I wrote it. Whatever that it refers to is irrelevant. The point is that who is a maf'ulun bihi. The ta is called ta'u al-fa'ili. It's the ta that represents the doer, i.e. me. And then we have kitab, that's the fi'lun, which happens this time to be fixed upon the sukoon, litisalihi bita'i al-fa'il, because it's connected to the ta of the fa'il. So this is very common. Similarly, if we say one of your favorite now verbs, ya akhlaq, darabtuhu. Darabtuhu. What does darabtuhu mean, ya akhlaq? Darabtuhu.
I hit it.
I hit
Him.
him. Darab, hit, to, I hit him. Darabtuhu. Right? I'll just do the next sentence, which is قال التاجر لقد سمعت إن لقد سمعت
إن أسنانا
أن السنان الفيران أقوى على السنان. Right. قال. The easy bit. What does قال mean, ya akhlaqu?
He said.
He said. Who was it who said it?
The merchant.
التاجر. So tajiru is marfu'un. التاجر قال التاجر. What did he say? He said
لقد.
لقد. لقد. So how are we going to now pronounce this? Submit to, which means I heard. It wouldn't make sense now, would it, to say لقد سمعت, she heard. لقد سمعت, you heard. Wouldn't make sense, would it? لقد سمعت, indeed I heard. أن. We'll do in a separate lesson, but it has its own rule. Here it just means that indeed. لقد سمعت أن comprises of two parts. اسم أن and خبر أن. اسم أن is always منصوب. أسنان.
So is it like opposite to kana?
Yes. Anna, asnana means
Teeth.
teeth. Then we have al-firan,
Which would be new.
which means
Mice.
the mice. Right? The mice. I wanted to mention actually. Al-fa'ru is the mouse. Al-fa'ru. What's al-judharu? Al-judharu is the rat. That's useful to know, isn't it? There's a word for the rat. And we'll know why that's interesting. Because there's no word for the rat in Urdu. No word.
In Urdu, did you say?
Yes. But there is in Arabic. Sal-judhuru. And the plural is al-jidhranu. Al-jidhranu. This is a plural of the mate is al-firan. But we're not going to say al-firan. Why? We're going to say al-firani. Why? Because asnan al-firani is an idafa. So what did he say? لقد سمعت أن أسنان الفراني, that the mice of the teeth. Now this is where we have خبر إن. What is it about the mice of the teeth? أقوى. أقوى. This is اسم تفضيل. Most powerful. أقوى al-asnani. Yes. Well, that's an idafa. Aqwa al-asnani.
What does it mean?
Aqwa. What does aqwa mean? Most powerful. Most powerful of teeth. Right. And the last bit is وَأَنَّ الْفِرَانَ تُحِبُّ أكل الحديد وأن الفيران وجه الفيران تحب الحديد. Right. So the easy bit is وَأَنَّ الْفِرَانَ, and indeed the mice, تُحِبُّ. تُحِبُّ means
It's a presence.
she loves.
Does that have a yeah?
No.
Being.
تُحِبُّ. No. This is third person. Not you.
Oh yes.
She. وَأَنَّ الْفِرَانَ تُحِبُّ, and that the firan تُحِبُّ,
She loves.
she loves. But note how we're using singular female to refer to al-firana, because that's the rule, isn't it? Where your doer or the subject is non-human plural. Al-firan is non-human plural, therefore we refer to it as she loves. What does she love? Aklal hadidi. Oh, this will really confuse you. Because akla al-hadidi is what type of construct? Idafatun. Because you know, because I've made al-hadidi majrurun, and the second and an idafa is always a majrurun. But you're now confused because why have I vowelized that akla and not akala? Akala is a verb. Fi'lun means he ate. Aklun.
One meat.
Aklun is called al-masdar. Right? Which is the noun derived from the verb, right? That represents the action of the verb. What that means is akala means he ate. Aklun means eating. Aklun means eating. Right? When we say aklun, eating, in English, automatically you assume that's a verb, don't you? Right? But in Arabic, you know that is not a verb. That is not fi'lun madi, and it's not al-mudari.
It's not verb because it's got two.
Yes, because I've purposefully placed tanween dammin. So in Arabic, it's not uncommon to express an action using a verb, which may seem strange. But what are we saying here? We're saying, he said, لَقَدْ سَمِعْتُ, indeed I've heard, that the teeth of al-firan, the teeth of the mice, are the most powerful of teeth, and that the mice love. What do they love? تُحِبُّ أَكْلَ الْحَدِيدِ. They love eating iron. If you wanted to phrase that as a verb, you would say تُحِبُّ أن تأكل الحديد. Note the difference between أكل الحديد.
It's not idafa anymore.
She loves eating iron, and she loves to eat iron. That is an ismun. That is a fi'lun. Right? You need to absorb the difference in meaning Well, in meaning they're the same, but the difference in the way that we've constructed the sentences. You need to understand and absorb that difference, because it's very common, right, to use the verbal noun. In English it's called the verbal noun to represent an action, even though the word itself is not a fi'l. Okay?
So, like for example, jasala, would say
Jalsa, no, it would be a jalsatun. But the point to note is that the more we read these stories, the more we'll encounter that. And I will make reference to it, right? But for the moment, just accept that that's an ismun. And of course, it wouldn't make sense if you tried to vowelize that as a fi'lun. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense to say tuhibbu, she loves, akala, he ate, al-hadida, the iron. That's why it has to be an ism.
Is akal al-hadidi the mansub in the sentence? I mean, sorry, maf'ul bih in the sentence.
In this one it is. Not in... Oh, in this one, yeah. Akal al-hadidi is.
So that's why it's akal la.
No. Yeah, sorry, that's why it's akla, yes. That's al-hadidi because it's mudafun ilayh.
Okay.
Okay? Right, we should conclude. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.